Top Game with your host, Sammy Castro, Episode 5, Master Gunnery Sergeant Orlando Reyes. Disclaimer, the views and opinions expressed on Top Game are those of the producers and or the guests appearing on the program and do not reflect the views and opinions of the United States Marine Corps or the Department of Defense. Thanks for tuning in.
It takes some getting used to, but once you kind of get it, you can start to see that there's a lot more that you can do than just using like the basic, recording programs. But I asked you earlier if you had a chance to listen to the podcast, and I'm glad that you hadn't, because it kind of gives us a clean slate to work with. I know when I asked you on the phone last week, was it this week or last week?
Last week.
About sitting down and recording an episode. I chose you for several reasons. First, because to be honest, I'm really just starting to get to know you. Mm-hmm. After having been here for a year, but us being on different sides of Okie, it can almost seem like we're in different states.
Oh yeah.
With the traffic and the work tempo, exercises. I mean, you throw all that on into there. I mean, our opportunities actually get to a spot where we can just hang out and relax. I think we've gotten together like 3 or 4 times. Mm-hmm. And one thing I told Liz when we first started hanging out was that I really got a good vibe out of you, but I could also tell that there was a lot going on, and I couldn't put my finger on it, and she kind of explained to me that you've been through a lot, and she kind of left it at that. Over time, in conversation, I've gotten a little bit more detail. But before we kind of go too far into that, I want to ask, up front, is there anything that you would like to declare off limits and things that you don't want to talk about, or you just kind of want to go? And if we hit a spot that you don't feel comfortable with, we can wave off and edit later.
Without really knowing which direction you're wanting to go to, I can't tell you, what not to talk about, because like I said, it doesn't bother me anymore.
Okay.
I mean, it took me a long time to talk about that subject, and after I did, I realized the positive ramifications that come from opening up about that. So that's why I've had no problem ever since then.
Okay. So let's kind of back up all the way to the beginning. You enlisted like in 1994.
Mm-hmm. Well, I signed up for the DEP in '93, as most. What's that?
Coffee?
Oh, sorry.
No worries.
As most poolies, for recruiters, when the juniors that are no longer juniors and become seniors, and they're now eligible for enlistment. Yeah, I was snatched up with that crowd over the summer of between my junior and senior year. I got a phone call, I'll never forget. It was like a Saturday morning, early. Dude woke me up, and I was just telling him whatever he needed to hear to get off the phone. And at the end, he said, okay, so we're good for an appointment. You know where I'm located? I'm like, yeah, you guys are over here. He's like, no, that's the Army office. I'm like, well, who's calling me? He's like, this is the Marine Corps. I was like, oh yeah. So back then, whenever I committed to something, I said, I'll do it. So I showed up, and it sounded like everything I wanted to do. It wasn't offered as this pretty little package where we're going to give you all the world, and all you got to do is just sign the dotted line. You're going to get it. Well, this guy made it sound like you have to earn it.
Right.
And I appreciated that. So it was I knew I was going to join the military, and the recruiters and my brother-in-law was a former active duty. He was a Marine, yeah. So they all painted this picture for me as far as the Marines were the best, and everybody you talk to at that time at my age, they always said, oh, why the Marines? They're the toughest. Well, that started driving that factor even home more for me. Because I always say this, I never wanted to be in another branch wondering if I could have been a Marine. I figured I'll do this, and if I fail, then I was meant to not make it. But if I can do it, then at that point, when you're 18, you've yet to be challenged. Most kids have not been challenged, and I really thought that if I could do that, then there was nothing I couldn't do. What I thought were my limits, we went beyond that. So now I was, as a young, cocky 18-year-old, I thought I was limitless. So yeah, I enlisted in the DEP as...
I think that holds true for a lot of us,
Mm-hmm.
especially those that have stuck around for as long as we have. So, but your family was Army, right?
My brother and my dad, yes, they were Army. I've had a few Marines here and there, an uncle, a cousin, my brother-in-law, like I said, my sister's married too, but there were few, like the slogan goes, there were few in the family that were Marines.
But they were proud.
Oh yeah,
and ready to talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
So you enlisted. What recruitment substation did you come in out of?
I came out of RSS Stockton, so that was my hometown, and I ended up going to Oakland MEPS.
Is that considered NorCal?
Yeah.
Okay.
Back then, they had MEPS was in Oakland. Now it's in Sacramento. There's one in Oakland, one in Sacramento. But yeah, I had to go all the way to Oakland for MEPS, and that was interesting. Going to the street, the hood.
Right.
But yeah, that was back in the day. And things have changed, and it's ironic that later on in my career, I ended up going on recruiting duty back to Stockton. So
same RSS.
Well, at the time, there was just Stockton, but then as they've grown over the years, they ended up bringing in a personal contact station, which is a PCS, under the umbrella of Stockton. So they had one in Tracy, they had one in Stockton, Manteca. So when I got there, I was RSS Stockton, but they sent me out to that little PCS in Manteca by myself.
So is it Manteca or Manteca?
The folks around there call it Manteca, but we all know it's Manteca. That was actually one of my my pitches to the kids. I'm like, so you want to hang around pig fat the rest of your life? It's like pig fat. Like, that's what Manteca is lard.
That's funny. So you enlisted. What outfit did you ended up?
Ironically enough, I was guaranteed aviation supply. That's what my brother-in-law was.
Okay.
And I had the GT score for that, but then I ain't gonna lie. And when I was in high school, I experimented with the Mary J.
Okay.
And when it was one of the pool functions. They kind of gave us like a moment of truth.
Okay.
and I cracked under the pressure, which was probably good that I did that there instead of boot camp, because they were able to retain me. They just said that I lost my guaranteed job. Okay. So do you still want to be a Marine? I'm like, yeah, I still want to be a Marine. Okay, you're going to go at open contract. I was like,
So which moment of truth was this?
This was a moment of truth that we had at a pool function.
Okay.
So we
get one later in
boot camp. Yeah. So we went to Alameda for some kind of like field meet, and they had that as part of the pool function. They all sat us down and they turned the screws on us. And I cracked. So. I ended up having to go in open contract, and I remember thinking to myself, well, if I'm going to be a grunt, I'm going to be a grunt, because that's a possibility, or who knows what's going to happen.
Right.
So I'll never forget, because I didn't know what I was going to be until MCT. That's when they told you MOSs for those that were open contract. And I remember going through boot camp. You know how when you do your order arms, port arms. You do your
right.
Your inspection, getting ready for all that stuff, and you always have to say, your name and your MOS. So since I was open, they said you have to say 03. So I was already getting ready for it,
Right.
But then in MCT, MOS day came down, and I heard my name Reyes, and they said, oh, I'm like, oh shoot, what is it gonna be? Because he said right away, 0481. I was like, okay, 0481. Looked it up, found out it was landing support specialist. Had no idea what that was. And then I find myself in North Carolina, Courthouse Bay, going through basic landing support specialist course. And about a week into it, they let us know that we got to put red patches on our uniforms. I thought we were, getting pranked. I'm like, no, I've never seen no red patches before. This is a joke. This is what you do to the new guys, But later on, I found out the truth behind the red patch. As far as we being shore party and we needing to be identified as shore party.
For those that don't know, because it was a while before it was explained to me.
Mm-hmm.
Could you explain what the significance is of the red patch?
The significance of it was spawned after World War II because the shore party was arriving on the beach and they were shore party. They were there controlling the assets that were coming on, personnel and cargo, and too many of them were getting rolled up into the movements that were pushing forward. Hey, you're coming with us, and there was chaos on the beach. There was nobody there. And on the flip side, there were some that were landing on the beach that were not so strong of heart that were trying to say I'm shore party.
Right.
So the Marine Corps decided to designate us by identifying patches to put on the uniform. So now there's no question. And then there's a kind of an equivalent in the Navy. They have yellow patches. They're shore party for the Navy.
Okay.
But
I don't think I've ever seen those.
They're like a unicorn nowadays.
Yeah.
But they're there just to ensure that we control the ship-to-shore movement, which is something that we've gotten away from over the years. We're all flying to Iraq and Afghanistan now. But I think that you are going to start seeing more and more of that come back into the fold as far as the amphibious operations of the Marine Corps.
Okay. All right. So 0481.
Mm-hmm.
What was your first follow-on assignment after Courthouse Bay?
After Courthouse Bay, I ended up going to Camp Del Mar, California, which was, I thought, a great place to be for a young, teenager, going to Southern California. Camp Del Mar, if you're not familiar with Pendleton, it's right there on the coast. So as soon as you come into the main gate, you can go straight into all that is Camp Pendleton, or as soon as you come into the main gate, you make a left, you go over the bridge, and boom, you're in Camp Del Mar, and you're right there on the coast.
Okay.
That's where the AAV school is at. That's where the field med school is at. And back in the day, that's where 1st LSB, Landing Support Battalion, was at, when we were still 1st FSSG. And I was part of a BTO company, which is Beach and Terminal Operations. So we did a lot of port operation groups, air and arrival groups. We'd go out to was it Travis? I'm trying to think of there's an Air Force base in Riverside that's been shut down. It's used like a reserve airfield now. We used to do a lot of airfield operations there. Found myself going to Qatar. We offloaded a full MPF ship, which is a Maritime Prepositioning Force ship, which has got like everything that we need, which gives us that we can be anywhere within 48 hours kind of thing.
Okay.
So I've done a few things in Del Mar, but Del Mar was great because it was to me it was closest to being in college without having to worry about passing any classes. Because back then TJ was open, Tijuana, you could go down. It was safe.
It was safe.
It was safe to go down to TJ.
Not anymore.
No, I'm Mexican and I won't even go to TJ. I'm too fair-skinned.
That makes two of us. That makes two of us. Yeah. I don't think I've ever been to TJ. The last trip across the border was to Matamoros with Liz before I joined the Marine Corps. But yeah, you can't do that any longer. So after Del Mar.
Well, while I was in Del Mar, I ended up meeting who would be my first wife.
Okay.
So I was, at the time, I was 19 years old. She was just turned 18. We ran into each other at the Del Mar E-Club. And if anybody knows Del Mar back then, that was the place to be. The E-Club
really?
On base. Oh, yeah.
The E-Club.
People would come down from Orange County just to go to that club. Because it was a mashup. It had an R&B floor, a country floor, and like a top 40 hits floor.
Okay.
Which was, in hindsight, not a good combination of people to have drinking and in close proximity with each other, which is why the Camp Del Mar Guard Force, that was their sole purpose in life, was policing the E-Club. Okay. That place became the the place to get into a lot of fights. So yeah, I ended up meeting her there, and knowing what I know now, I wish I would have done things a little differently. I don't regret my two boys that I had with my ex-wife. But I wouldn't have gotten married as young as I did.
Okay.
Because at 19 years old, 20 years old, when we finally tied the knot, I had not matured. I was still young. I was still figuring myself out. And for some people they can do it, some people they can't. And I'll admit that was one of my shortcomings, is that we ended up growing in two different directions as opposed to together. And that's because each of us were immature at the time, and we matured differently, and our perspectives about each other definitely changed. and it's something that was always kind of in the background, whether we spoke about it or not. Okay. So that's where that happened. After Delmar, though, I ended up volunteering for the 15th MU. Went on a deployment for Operation Southern Watch in '96 and '97. So we went to a lot of different places. Hong Kong, Australia, Singapore, UAE. Went around Malaysia into Australia. It was a good experience. I never forget, because I told myself when I first came in and out, we did a lot of port operations, and I was working a lot with the ships, and we'd go on and off, and I was like, there's no way I'm ever going to go on deployment. No. Because I couldn't do this ship life. It's all like, so
Right.
packed and sardines on top of each other, but when I went on that MU, it was one of the best experiences I'd ever had.
Yeah, I can honestly say I floated in '08 in the 22nd MU, and we did a med float, so the other side of CONUS, and it definitely was one of the most memorable experiences that I've had in uniform.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of hard to really articulate, what is so memorable about it, especially when you talk about living in close proximity and the quarters being as tight as they are, and just that ship life can be monotonous and so routine, but when you pull into those different ports and you get those unique one-off experiences, it definitely makes it all worth it. So after the MU, what your time frame was that?
That was '96, '97. So I came back to first FSSG, and I returned into Alpha Company, which was, we did a lot of the same things that BTO did. We just did more helicopter support teams, more port group exercises, things of that nature. And then I ended up getting the opportunity to become a marksmanship instructor. So I went to the coach's course, and then while I was in coach's course, I picked up corporal. So then I was now eligible to be a primary marksmanship instructor.
Okay.
So I went and got that skills done, that school knocked out, and really embraced the aspect of teaching. I really enjoyed it. It was great because to me there was no greater thrill than having somebody who could not hit the target, whether it would be with a rifle or a pistol, and then you kind of tell them, focus on this, tweak that, be firmer here, and boom, bullseye.
Right.
You couldn't get. To me, that was like
it's better than you doing it yourself.
And it's so satisfying to know that you can get instantaneous results from your teaching just like that.
Right.
And they can duplicate it. And it was a good feeling. And I had a lot of Marines that would come up to me and say thank you for the passion that I put into it, transcended to what they were getting from me, and they equally tried to be as passionate about it, and they really bettered their skills, whether it be on the rifle or the pistol. And for the rifle, Marines, that they need that for promotion. And
Right.
you got some guy who's consistently shooting marksman or barely scratching at sharpshooter, and now they hit expert, and that just shoots their cutting score up because of the points they get. So yeah, it was.
Now you're affecting their paychecks and their promotions and retention and all of that stuff.
Oh yeah, so it was a good feeling, and I really enjoyed teaching. I remember for a while there, I thought to myself that when I get out, this is what I want to do. I want to teach because I want to see that light bulb turn on. And then I married my current wife, and she's a teacher, and that stopped that desire right away because I listened to the stories.
Yeah. Being so close to Liz in her career in education, it's made me reconsider, or even it's also prompted me to caution anybody that I hear that wants to go into the educational realm, because they don't really understand what they're getting themselves into. It really has to be someone who's passionate about it, because the devil's in the details, and that can sometimes detract away from what prompted somebody to go into that field in the first place. So after your stint at the MTU?
So after, so that was in '98, because I got back from the MU, was doing Alpha, then MTU, and then in '99 I received orders to Okinawa, Japan. So I came here
to the Rock.
Yeah, and I was at 3rd TSB, 3rd FSSG, because we hadn't made that transition yet.
She's still married?
Still married. Had one boy, and we had one out here. So my kids' names are Gage and Ian. Gage is the oldest; he's 21 already, and Ian just turned 17. He'll turn 18 next January.
Okay.
So Ian was born on Okinawa, and came here and worked over at BTO company for First TSB. And we did a lot of port operations once again here. HSTs, which is the helicopter support teams, which is good because we traveled to Ishima Island. We went all up and down Okinawa. Went to different LZs, and it was to me, I always found lots of enjoyment out of doing HSTs because you get a lot of time to spend with your Marines, sitting there waiting for the helicopters to show up, and it's good opportunities, for discussions and just finding out about each other.
Right.
And it's good bonding.
Right.
Because we're all suffering together, so might as well. Misery loves company. And then I eventually ended up volunteering for the 31st MU out here, which at the time was down at Kinzer. That's
Okay.
where all the shops were at, and that was a good time. Got to go back to Hong Kong after they had fallen back under Chinese rule. I went to Hong Kong with the 15th MU, Hong Kong with the 31st MU, but before it was British, then it was Chinese.
Okay.
So then did some a lot of good work out there. Definitely had my first run-in with a bad officer. Had a bad officer, and I can't remember his name because he's not as memorable to me as the fact that he was just an example not to follow.
Right.
He had come over from Motor T to take over the landing support platoon.
So was it your first experience with bad leadership, or just first experience with a bad officer? You'd seen bad enlisted leadership before.
Yeah, I'd seen bad traits, bad styles of leadership. You got the imperialistic leader who just tells you do as I do, not as I say, kind of thing.
Right.
I've had various forms of bad leadership, but this is my first bad officer because most of them have been very. They had succumbed to the fact that as a young lieutenant that they had a lot to learn, and they definitely embraced their staff NCOs. And we had a good staff NCO with us on the 31st MU, and but this guy was very headstrong. And he felt that because he had learned it in a book, that he had all the pertinent knowledge he needed to do whatever he had to do. So like I said, he came over from Motor T to take over the landing support. And landing support, we had a combination of red patchers and HE, heavy equipment operators, because we do a lot of movement.
Okay.
And one of the first things he wanted to do with us is he asked us to put out all of our beach paddle markers. And for those that don't know, beach paddle marker is what we establish on the beach. That way from the ship, you can see with binoculars, this is where the tracks go. This is where the fuel goes. This is where ammo. This is where chow. So that way, as you're approaching the beach, you can kind of line yourself up. So that way, you're not having to cross paths to go from one side of the beach to the left.
Okay.
So we set these beach paddle markers up, and he has a diagram that he wants us to follow. But it came out of the MCI. Now,
so it's got to be gospel.
Oh, yeah, it's got to be. But I don't know who wrote that MCI, but they had fuel next to ammo next to chow.
Ooh.
You don't do that. Because if one goes off, if the fuel or the ammo goes off, there goes three of your main things that you need, fuel, ammo, and chow. So me and the other NCOs collectively decided we're going to set up the way it's supposed to be. So when he gets out there, the lieutenant is angry.
You would put the chow in between the fuel and the ammo?
Oh, no. We separated. Fuel's over here, ammo is over here, chow's in the middle.
That's what I meant, yeah.
Oh, yeah. So we definitely separated it. But when he got there, he whips out his diagram and he looks at the markers, and he's not happy with the way they are. And he insists that we correct that deficiency. And, of course, me and another sergeant, we're arguing. Not arguing, we're trying to talk reason into the young lieutenant that, sir, that's just not the way you do it.
Advising.
Exactly. And there was this other sergeant that, just, yes, sir, we'll take care of that. While we're trying to mentor and teach this young lieutenant. It didn't work out. So I think that was like the beginning of the end in our professional relationship, because that was like at the beginning of the whole deployment cycle, with the workups and all that, and then we actually went out for the pump. And when it came time for my fit rep to be written by this lieutenant, it was a joke. I mean, he gave me the lowest marks you can give without giving somebody adverse.
Right.
And the section I comments, I committed them to memory because it was so short. Said name Marine was a good worker. Said name Marine opened his home to the Marines during the holidays.
That's it.
And I remember I went high and to the right to the sergeant major, like, this is crap. Out of all the things that not just me, but collectively, we as a platoon have done on this deployment with the last minute getting Marines out of Korea because there was a storm coming in and we were freaking working the helicopters and getting personnel to safety. None of that was captured. None of the things that we did. And that's just one of the many things. And I was like, that was the first time I learned that, it's just not worth getting upset about recognition, because you will find yourself constantly seeking it. So I stopped at that point. I didn't care because we worked so hard and nothing for it. But I guarantee if we would have messed up, we would have heard it,
Right.
on a daily.
So I kind of want to touch on that because, and I mentioned before we press record, that I've been working with some young staff NCOs and young sergeants who were just kind of figuring out what their role is as it pertains to the performance evaluation system and that MROW, that Marine Reported on Worksheet, and what they owe not only to the reporting senior and the reviewing officer, but what they owe to themselves to be meticulous and careful as they're documenting their billet description, their billet accomplishments. And one of the tactics that I've employed with these young Marines is making them write their own fitness report, top to bottom, and to include the Section I comments, and then to objectively look at themselves in the mirror, and the takeaway is it's difficult to self-assess, and then to put that on paper. And to be honest, where are your holes? Where are your gaps? And what are you going to do to be able to shore those deficiencies as you identify them? How are you going to be able to seek self-improvement and develop? Once you identify what needs to be done, and develop a plan to execute that. But the takeaway is also, these lieutenants have a hard time sometimes putting pen to paper with regard to these fitness reports, and so anything that the young Marine can do to facilitate that is going to benefit them, because I've learned that it's not the best Marines that get selected; it's the best documented Marines.
Yes. And what's funny is that they tell you that you shouldn't let personal feelings get in the way of how you evaluate somebody. And I think that a lot of officers are very good about trying to not allow how much they favor somebody transcend into what they write on the report. They try to be fair and balanced. But I do think that when somebody does not like somebody, they can't help themselves. They cannot. I'm not going to give this guy, that much detail. I'm not going to, say that many good things. And I will say that as a young sergeant, I wasn't really mentored well. Could I have handled the situation with the young lieutenant better? Probably. I do not recall ever getting an initial counseling from that guy, letting me know what my priority should be. This is what he expects. This is my billet description. Never got that. I highly advocate that whenever you step into any position as a sergeant and above, you need to make sure that you get that initial counseling with your RO, so that way you know what is expected of you. And I would highly recommend that you, within 6 months or 90 days to 6 months, you re-engage with that RO to ensure that you don't need a rudder steer, or you track it. You have to establish a good professional relationship. Yes. I didn't say personal, but at least have a professional relationship where you can communicate with each other. And you don't have to like the individual, but you still have to stay professional. And that should be on the forefront of every discussion you have with your sir or ma'am. Definitely. Because if not, like I said before, whatever ill will is present under the surface will come out, whether you like it or not, in the fit rep. And there should be a final counseling, not a final counseling, but a counseling when you get your fit rep, whether it be annual, transfer, grade change. You should have a sit down with your RO and go over block by block, statement by statement, That way you can catch, hey sir, did you know I went to PME? Hey sir, did you know I was doing off-duty edge? Something that might have been missed. Hey sir, did you know I got a meritorious mass? That now makes this a commendatory report. So there's things that you have to make sure that you cover. And and I didn't do any of that with that lieutenant. I was just butthurt. And as a young sergeant, when I got upset, I just got angry at it and tried to rectify it. But as I've gotten older and more experienced, then I definitely take things better now. But I can look back and reflect on that as definitely a lesson, an opportunity for a lesson learned.
So did the fitness report stand as it was?
It did. The sergeant major at the time didn't do nothing for me. It was a lack of effort on the command's part, but I also didn't drive it as hard as I could have, and that ended up affecting me because when I got looked at for staff sergeant the first time, I got passed over. And the only thing I could freaking get from the board members that I could talk to was that you had lack of MOS credibility. Well, at the time when I was selected for staff sergeant, I had been a sergeant for 2 years, and the only time I spent time in my MOS was my time at the 31st MU. I didn't get a very stellar fit rep from that time. The rest of the time I was either the company at the time when I was at BTO, they put me in charge of the admin shop because we had our own individual admin sections in the companies at the time, and I became the admin chief. They didn't know jack about admin, but I treaded water.
Right.
And then after I left the MU, I went back to BTO or TSB, and rather than put me back in BTO company, they decided that they wanted me to lead up MTU. So I was a sergeant filling a gunny's billet, and I enjoyed doing that there as well because I love teaching. So if you look at that time span, I only spent in my MOS 8 months. The workup and the deployment. So that's what I was told, that I had lack of MOS credibility. And the next year, I volunteered for recruiting duty. So I left the island here in 2002. Yeah, February 2nd, 2002. And I volunteered for recruiting.
So, but at this time, before you PCS off to go do recruiting duty, how old are your boys?
Well, Ian was born in 2001. Gage was born in 97. So after about the time we were getting ready to leave, Gage was 5 and Ian was about 1.
Okay. And how does life on Oki compare between then and now?
Oh,
when it comes to like family, services, facilities, schools.
I will say this: the last time I was here, all of us that were stationed in Okinawa were much more community driven, meaning that we actually got out and got to know our neighbors. Because back then we didn't have the internet. I mean, it did, but it was fledgling. We didn't have Google Maps. We didn't have pin drops. We didn't have devices that we could navigate around the island with.
Right.
So you either knew somebody that was intimately knowledgeable about where to go, or you didn't. And if you didn't, you stayed on base because you didn't want to venture out and spend 3 hours
trying to
find something that you, if you with somebody who knew where they were going, you probably get there in 10, 15 minutes. So, and plus, there was no Google Translate back then. So if you didn't know Japanese, good luck out in town. Because they don't have Google Translate either out there. So a lot of people would stay within their communities. Last time I was here, I lived in a cul-de-sac on Camp Foster. If you go up to the Naval Hospital and you look to the right-hand side, there's all that construction. Everything is just like, dirt. That used to be base housing.
Okay.
And I was living back in that area, and I was in a cul-de-sac, much like what I'm in now, and loved it. Everybody in that cul-de-sac knew everybody. We barbecued together, we partied together, we sat out in the front and drank beer together. We became a community, and I really enjoyed that. And I was really looking forward to that coming back here. The sightseeing, not so much, like I said last time, because we just didn't know where to go, and we didn't have the tools. I mean, think about opening up a map in the States back in 2001, 2000. That's
right.
That's challenging, especially when I was in recruiting. I had to do that too. But try doing that here. Look at Google Maps and really just kind of look at the roads There is no rhyme or reason. There's no grid. There's no.
And a lot of that is dictated by geography and things how things are built up over time here.
And what Google Maps tells you, a map doesn't. Like, this is a tiny little road. This is a one-way road. This is a it's because it's just. Yeah, I wouldn't even try it when I was out here last time. So it's definitely different. I definitely appreciate the opportunities that we have available to us in means of technology. Your smartphones, your internet, whatever. The communication between all the service members and their spouses, which is what we didn't have. Last time I was here, Marines with Marines, so forth and so forth. But now everybody's talking to everybody. I'm sure if anybody who listens to this is familiar with Facebook, that there's the Okinawa questions, the pin drops, the cafes, the yard sales. So much information is flowing now, and it's good. It's good that people are able to tap into each other as opposed to figuring it out for themselves at expense of their time and effort.
Right, and leading almost an insulated existence.
Yes.
I would agree. So how hard is recruiting really?
I will say that it is as hard as you make it, and it's as easy as you make it. I remember when I was going through recruiting school, our instructor asked us as a collective, do you want me to teach you how to pass tests, or do you want me to teach you how to recruit? And we all unanimously teach us how to recruit. Long story short, two of us ended up in my same RS Sacramento. He was in Reno, I was in Stockton. And he was Rookie Recruiter of the Year, and I was Recruiter of the Year, 2003, because of the instruction that we got from that guy. Even though he was a jerk as an instructor, he gave us that tough love that really helped us out. Now, when I got to the streets, my NCOIC told me that, just put in the work. Put in 6 months of hard work. Make your phone calls. Get out there and press the flesh. Call your cold calls. Get a bow wave, as they call it. So when you're on ship and as the ship's moving forward, it pushes water out and then it comes back under the ship, causing that perpetual motion to keep continuously happening and making the ship move through. So he said, that's what I want you to do in a sense as a recruiter. Put the work in, get yourself out there, talk to a lot of kids, talk to as many kids as you can. And eventually that water is going to come back. And sure enough, kids that I talked to this month would come back next month or the month after. Before I knew it, I was having a consistent flow of potential contracts coming my way, because it just took a little bit more for this kid to decide than it did to this kid or that kid, whatever. But
they talk amongst themselves too.
Oh yeah,
not around.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that I prided myself on, is that I didn't BS anybody. I was told one thing in recruiter school, and it stuck with me when I was out there. While you're out there on that street, ask yourself, is the person sitting across from you at that interview table worthy enough to stand next to you? And if you can answer yourself honestly, yes or no, then you will do right by the Marine Corps, and you'll do right by yourself, and you do right by these kids. You won't try to put in just a body.
Right.
Because that's a headache you don't want when you put in somebody who's kind of iffy about whether or not they want to be a Marine.
Did you have anybody drop out after you shipped them off to boot camp?
Oh, yeah. I mean, everybody's going to have their share of attrition. I'll never forget the first kid I enlisted. His name was Wayne Steele. He came into my office. Like I said, I was in a one-man fighting hole in Manteca. And he came in with his little folder. He had his high school diploma. He was 18. He had his scores from school, his ASVAB scores, and he was...
ready to go.
He was ready to go. And I looked at him with a crooked eye. I'm like, yeah, what's wrong with you? Let me ask you the medical questions. Sure enough, he was good. And he was gung-ho about being a Marine. And enlisted him, no problem. So he was in the poolie for about 8 months before he finally, was going to go to boot camp. Product of a single mother. So when it came time for him to ship to boot camp, he was crying, which is understandable. You're about to leave the world as you know it and walk into the unknown. And
did you cry before you went to boot camp?
I did not. No, I did not. But I've seen, as a recruiter, I'd seen a variety of reactions from the kids.
I can only imagine.
But this kid was crying, and because he was leaving his mom, and his mom was had nobody. So I took it with a grain of salt, and I thought he'll be okay. No, he got to boot camp and kept crying. He cried for the next 3 days,
wow.
And finally said the words that you don't want to hear. I'm afraid of what I might do to myself. And that was his ticket out. So
Do you think that there was some sincerity in that, or you think he was just playing the game?
I think he was playing the game. You know, I can say that with confidence because 6 months later, I had moved on to become the staff NCO I see at Stockton, and I put in another one of my staff sergeants in Manteca. And he gives me a call one day. He's like, you know a guy named Wayne Steele? I'm like, yeah, I know who he is. He quit. Well, he's in here wanting to get back in. I'm like, oh, no. You can send him to the Army. Because I told all my kids the same thing. I said, you look, good luck. I'll see you in 3 months. If it takes a little longer, so be it. You know, in case you get hurt, you get fat, whatever. But if it's over any sooner than that, don't come back here, because that means you quit. And I just can't see sending somebody who quit back there thinking that they're gonna, because they quit at a certain point. Okay, they might get to that point again and overcome that challenge, but then here comes the next challenge that they're not prepared for.
Right.
How do you think they're going to react to that one if they've already quit before? And I'm just not down for wasting the Marine Corps' time and money on somebody who's not 100% sure on what they want to do.
I can understand that. So, I had a conversation recently for episode 1. A buddy of mine, Master Sergeant Select Chris Sonovan, and he was talking about some of the high caliber Marines that we've lost this past year or so on the HIST list. One in particular was a radio reconnaissance guy, stellar team leader by the name of Staff Sergeant Cody Mongosa. If I mispronounce his name, I apologize, but he's now on recruiting duty. But I mean, and I've seen a lot of team leaders over the years, myself included, and I've always had a high opinion of how good I was as a team leader, although I know better. But I can honestly say he's probably one of the strongest TLs that I've ever seen, and now, in the eyes of some, we've put him in a position where he's having to readjust and readapt to a different assignment, and it's a requirement. I get it, but there's still a large part of me that says this is a waste. But how do you respond to that when you hear a guy like me say something like that, knowing that you've been there, you've done that, and you've come back stronger?
It's funny how when somebody goes to become a drill instructor, 9 times out of 10, probably 10 times out of 10, that Marine wants to be a DI. There's not many people that say, I want to be a recruiter. They usually get voluntold, or maybe you get the few that volunteer. Like, I volunteered. I volunteered because at the time, if you volunteered, you got duty preference. Is where you wanted to go, and I wanted to go to my hometown. So,
because it makes it easier, you know the lay of the land.
Exactly, and I know the challenges that are being presented to those individuals that are getting out of high school, because I was facing the same, the hardship. As far as whether I go to junior college, do I go to work, what do I do? So I could relate to what they were getting ready to walk into. Now, here's what I would say about those individuals that are really, really good at their job and are concerned about going on recruiting duty because they're not, number one, they don't want to do it. Number two, they don't know anything about it. And number three, they're not sure if they're going to be good at it. Well, then that's why I think it's a good opportunity to really find yourself, because it's going to prove to you, just like boot camp did, that you can overcome what you are concerned about if you put forth the effort. Now, and the fact that this guy that you're talking about is such a good TL, he can talk about that with the young kids that are out there looking for something to potentially change their life with. Because to me, that's what I would talk about with the kids. I didn't talk about, I did when they asked about my job and about what I did, but I just talked about the Marine Corps. If you love what you do, that is what the kids pick up on. They're going to find that passion in you as you talk about it. they're going to realize that, wow, this guy's not just giving me some kind of pitch. He's talking about what he loves.
And it becomes infectious.
Exactly. And I would ask the kids that I recruited, why, okay, now that you've joined and you're in the, why? Why did you join? Why did you join the Marine Corps? And they would all say the same thing. It's because of the way you talked about it. Because the way you talked about it really inspired me to want to find whatever you have in that as well. I want to feel like that. I want to earn that. I want to be proud of that. I said, well, okay, that's good. I was curious because I was never trying to sell anybody. And that's where I think recruiting is beneficial because, like I said, it really gets you out of your comfort zone. Yeah, you're really good as a radio operator, as a logistician, as a grunt, whatever. But if you can do this, it's going to make you better. I do believe that because for all those introverts that don't like to talk to people, that don't like to engage, you're going to have to. You're going to have to. And it really makes you more of a people person. It helps you a lot with overcoming indifference. Yeah, we get sales classes. I ain't going to lie. We're taught how to sell a product that nobody wants. So if you're ever considering a career in sales when you get out of the military, think about how easy it would be to sell a product that somebody does want. It's a good experience. It's work. I think that's why a lot of people are scared of recruiting because it is work. It's a lot of work. You got to I would be at the office at 07 and I wouldn't leave sometimes till 2200. Not because I didn't know how to manage my time. It's because I was trying to maximize my time. I was trying to use every minute of every hour of every day to lay the groundwork and the foundation for the next day, the next week, the next month. And I was able to ride that wave for a long time. And I think that's what people are afraid of. They're afraid of actually having to work. And recruiting duty will do one thing that's really great. For all those people that have kind of been getting by in the Marine Corps, riding coattails, wallflowers, that, take credit for things without actually doing anything, they get identified. They get identified on the streets. And those Marines that work their butts off on a daily basis in the fleet, doing this, that, whatever, that are unappreciated and overworked, they shine on recruiting. They shine big time.
Because it truly is a sink or swim assignment.
Oh, yeah.
What kind of impact does it have on family readiness?
It was tough. It was tough on my then wife and I, because as much as I worked, I'll admit I developed a bit of a drinking problem because the one thing I really didn't like was I had no time to myself and my family. So when I would get home at 2200, I would stay up till about 01, 01:30, 02 because I wanted to feel like I had time at home. I didn't want to get home and go right to sleep and then, Groundhog Day all over again. So I was starting to burn both ends of the candle. And it started taking its toll because I would become irritable, easily agitated, argumentative at home.
You?
Oh yeah. I was a jerk. I was. But that's because
So do you think those characteristics were already resident in you and they just were amplified by the alcohol and being stretched thin, or do you think that it brought out a side that wouldn't have been there?
I think it was a combination of all elements. And I like you said, I think it brought out a side that I didn't like, but it presented itself. And once again I can look back with reflection and say that I could have done things better. Oh yeah, could have done things a heck of a lot better. But we're all where we are at this point in time because of what we've endured and what we've experienced. And as God says, everything happens for a reason.
So, how many years were you on the recruiting field?
I did 3 years out there, 36 1-month tours.
And then from there, where did you go?
From there, I went to Camp Lejeune, North Carolina.
And this is about what year time frame?
I left recruiting in 2005. Got there as a sergeant, left as a staff sergeant. I was recruiter of the year in 2003, which set me up for a meritorious promotion, but at the time I was already selected. So I deferred the meritorious promotion because I would have had to wait longer for that than if I would have just got my number. So I gave it to one of the other recruiters in my office got it, which was cool. He was very happy because he was a supply Marine, he's sergeant. He probably wouldn't have seen staff sergeant for a long time, as big as they are. So yeah, it was helpful for him. So I left the staff sergeant. Went to Camp Lejeune, North Carolina in May of 2005. And the gunny board let out in June or July of that year, and found out that I got pulled out of the below zone. So I can definitely say that recruiting helped my career, because when I was ranked one of the staff sergeants in the station for Recruiter of the Year, that I know resonated big time at the board when they were briefing my package. Not to mention because they're going to brief you as, this is staff sergeant so and so, PME complete, high PFT CFT, or first class PFT CFT, expert rifle, expert pistol, PME complete, and then they're going to hit those those highlights. Right. Hey, recruit, B billet, successful tour, Recruiter of the Year, and I do think that turned some heads. Because I got pulled out of the below zone. I was shocked when I was out there on a 50 cal range as an RSO, and I got a call from the company telling me congratulations. I'm like, for what? And I said, you got selected. I'm like, nah.
Not this guy.
Yeah. So it was great.
So you just get back to the fleet and boom, selected for gunny out of the below zone. Mm-hmm. What does gunny mean to you?
I remember I was asked that question that day I got promoted.
I bet.
And
it's a big deal.
I said it means staff sergeant wasn't a fluke.
I like that answer.
But gunny was one of the best ranks I have been a part of. I mean, I think a lot of people will talk about sergeant and gunny being the best ranks.
Yeah.
Because you're not quite political. You're not that boot staff sergeant anymore, and you can be that grumpy gunny with a voice.
Yeah. And
you don't have to watch your P's and Q's because you're the gunny. So I really enjoyed that, and I enjoyed the.
It is kind of like putting on a comfortable jacket that's well worn and I mean it just feels right.
Mm-hmm.
When you get into it, yeah. Because as a staff sergeant, you're figuring it out, and the game changes. It does, but as a gunny, I mean, you can. There's so much more that you're able to accomplish just off of that second rocker. Not to say that you take advantage of it. I mean, because you have to wield it appropriately. But yeah, for me, it was definitely one of the funnest ranks. And I was asked by a master sergeant that I'd known for quite a few years, who had maintained contact with. I was out at Fort Meade, and he said, you should be coming up close to master sergeant. You ready for it? And I said, I have to be honest, Top. I'm still enjoying my time as a gunny, and being this dominant gun club that we are, or a gun club comprised of such dominant individuals. It's rare to hear someone say that they're happy where they're at, and not so anxious or so excited to get to that next rank. But if there's one rank that you can kind of get away with that in this organization of ours, gunny is definitely the place to be, where you can say, you know what, I'm in that sweet spot right now, and if I do get selected to master sergeant, I'm ready for it, but I won't be mad, because I'm still comfortable where I'm at as a gunnery sergeant in this time and space where we exist right now. But when you pick up gunny, how does that change things for you?
It definitely gave me more confidence in what I wanted to say. It definitely gave me that carte blanche that I can say what I want and do what I want, because I know I'm going to be doing the right thing and saying the right thing. Because as once you start picking up rank in the staff NCO ranks, as you climb that ladder, you're expected to know more and more about your job. And that's of course when you start to figure out whether you want to go F or M. Do I want to be a first sergeant? Do I want to be a master sergeant?
You ever drop Fs?
No, not once. I never wanted to be a first sergeant. So I got selected that summer, and they frocked me to gunny, which I was unheard of. I was, wow, great. I get to go to Iraq as a gunny. Even though on the system I'm still a staff sergeant, so they got me at discounted rates.
Yeah.
But it was beneficial because when I went to Iraq in 05, I was working in the G3 for 2nd MLG under General Whistler, and I was writing the sit rep every day, and I would have to contact all the MSCs and hound them for their sit reps, and I don't think I would have been heard as well as a staff sergeant as I was as a gunny.
That makes sense.
It made things a lot easier, yeah, I was glad that they did that. I was unexpected. I wasn't asking for it at all. You know, I was ready to wait for my number to hit. So after my tour in Iraq, I ended up coming back to Camp Lejeune, still part of the 2nd MLG, moved from current operations as the chief to future operations as the chief. Did some good work there, and then ended up going to CLB2 as the S4 chief, deployed back to Iraq. This time not to Qadim, but Al-Assad, which was everything that it had been advertised as, Camp Cupcake. You know, it had the Burger King and the green beans coffee and freaking movie theater and all kinds of stuff there.
Do you feel like you missed out with that being like your experience in combat?
Well, when I was in TQ in 05, we still received indirect fire. You know, I mean, hell, one of the shells hit the church right after church let out. So thankfully, people were not in the building. So we still received.
I want to say I was there around that time because I was on Habanilla in around that 04-05 time frame, just north of TQ.
Okay.
We used to cross the Bridge of Doom.
Yeah, when I was in Iraq in 05, coming from Lejeune, where the constant barrage of artillery can be heard from anywhere on the camp, I was definitely desensitized by that. I remember when I first got there, we got shelled. I was pouring a cup of coffee and I didn't skip a beat. Everybody else hit the deck and went over the tables and everything, and I was like, "What's going on?"
Yeah.
Not because I'm hard or anything. I was just, like I said, so desensitized by Camp Lejeune's constant artillery practicing that goes on there.
Yeah.
But I am not an infantryman. I am a logistician. I am comfortable with my position in the Marine Corps. I know what my job is. And as a gunny, I'm starting to find myself in more staff roles. And I volunteered. I volunteered for for convoys and stuff, not because I wanted to car hunt, which some people do.
Yeah.
They put themselves on convoys just for the hopes that there's a firefight that they can get involved in and get that auspicious car on their chest. But I started thinking to myself, you know what? If I really push the envelope to get on a convoy, then I'm taking somebody out of that seat that's been training for this, that should be on this convoy. And if I go on a convoy that I'm ill prepared for, what good am I doing? And I could potentially, lead to harm.
Jeopardize the lives of others. Yeah.
Exactly. So I mean, to me, it wasn't important. Now, I always say that if trouble wants me, trouble gets me, but I'm not going to go looking for it. I don't think anybody goes over to Iraq itching to kill somebody, because that's also damage that you're going to have to live with. Those are visions that you're going to see for the rest of your life. You can ask any combat vet. Now, like I said, if I was to have found myself in a situation, absolutely, I would have stepped up to the challenge. But it wasn't something that we were expected of, and I wasn't going to, put myself in a position where I was able to do more harm than good. I have no doubts in my ability to shoot rifle and pistol. I mean, I'm very good in both. But like I said, I found myself in a position as on the CG staff for the G3 and Takata, and then as the S4 chief at CLB2, that I was not needed out there. I was not part of the engineering platoon that was constantly going out and repairing roads. I was part of the S4. I was there to do a specific job, and I puts the camis on its skin and does what it's told.
Right.
So, but when I was in CLB2, I did run across a lot of people who were doing that. They were car hunting. They were putting themselves on convoy after convoy after convoy, hoping for a situation. And I thought about that. I said, what does that say about the individual, that they're hoping for American Marines to be put in harm's way just so you can get a ribbon?
Yeah.
That's just wrong in its own sense. So, Yeah, I never really cared about that. Honestly, I really don't care about what's on my chest. I stopped caring about that, like I said, back in when I was with the 31st Mute. And because all I care about is my Marines.
Yeah.
Are they recognized? Are they taken care of? Are they given the opportunity to grow and advance as I have? And do they get recognized? That's what matters to me. I could care less about myself because I'm more worried about the insignia on my sleeve than the fruit salad on my chest.
Understandable. So, second tour, you come back.
Mm-hmm.
How are things on the home front after a second tour, right after or a tour of recruiting?
So, after the first deployment in 2005, things were good. Came back to a happy home. It was welcomed. Second tour, not so much. I think the getting used to me being gone was starting to become comfortable, I think for both, it was tough. Any of us that have deployed, it's tough to come home and transition back.
Yeah.
And that
You feel like an outsider.
Yeah, and that, in combination with somebody pretty used to you being gone, leads to some disagreements, arguments. It was difficult. It was difficult.
I would say even friction and tension would be the two words that
Yes.
that come to mind.
And it really came to. So I got back for my second deployment in summer of 2007, and got orders to MALS 26, which was an aviation element, which I'd never been a part of. I was always part of the FSSG, or the MLG anyway. So this is my first time with the wing. Things were fine. I'm working in the S4, and come to find out, we are going to be deploying to Iraq for a year. We're going to be going in 2009. So, okay, start getting used to that fact. Move forward. It's about November of 2008. Going to be deploying in a few months for a year. The fallouts of all fallouts happened between the wife and I forgot to mention, when I came back from my second deployment, she had mentioned that she wanted a divorce. And I pled that, please don't. And she acquiesced to, let's work on it. And I think that was just like a trial period or something. I don't know, because come November 2008, she said, I'm done. So that was really hard for me because, like you said, we're an alpha dominant group in the Marine Corps. So here I have been in charge of Marines, equipment, millions of dollars worth of property. I've been in so much control of a lot of things. And now I'm being told that I have no control over what's about to happen to my family life. And oh, by the way, my kids are being taken away from me. So it was really, really hard. And you can sit here, and a lot of people say that there's better ways to navigate adversity, different problems that you have in your life. Well, how do you know until you endure that problem, this problem, specific situation? You don't. I would love somebody who's never been through a divorce tell me how to handle a divorce. How do you even know? Because everybody goes through their own different situations, right, their own problems. And to me, it wasn't so much depression as anger. I was upset that everything was being stripped away from me, and I got pissed, and I was like, you know what, I'm gonna do something about this. And the only thing I could do was decide to swallow a bottle of pills and remove myself from the situation. Now, I can look back at my decision as stupid, but at the time, that wasn't the thought process that was going through my head. I was not being rational. I was angry, and I wasn't thinking clear. And of course, I had drank, so that just clouded the judgment.
And had you been drinking since recruiting duty up to this point in time?
Not in excess. I would still, partake in my beers and whatever. But not like in recruiting duty. I mean, recruiting duty, I was putting some beer away. So
What kind of pills did you take?
I don't remember the actual. I remember finding a bottle in the medicine cabinet because my wife had, at the time, she had so many narcotics in the house, from prescription. And I remember just grabbing a bottle, and I went online really quick and looked up, what could this do in excess? And it said death. So I was like, all right, this is what I'm taking. I don't remember what it was. And fortunately, after that happened, my neighbor had come over for something, to check on something, and she, the kids answered the door, and this is one of my biggest regrets was doing this when the kids were still in the house. And she found me on the floor, non-responsive. She called the ambulance. She stayed with me until the EMT showed up, and they immediately got me to the Naval Hospital over at Lejeune to determine whether or not I needed to get my stomach pumped, because they didn't know if it was too late or not.
Right.
So after I was taken care of in the ER there, standard practices, if you attempt suicide, then you're going to spend some time in level 4. And if you've ever been to Camp Lejeune Naval Hospital, level 4 is the mental health ward. So, it was an eye opener for me, because here I am being stripped of my shoelaces, my belt, anything that could potentially cause harm to myself, and given this white robe and hospital gown and slippers that or socks with little rubber bottoms and everything. So it's just like, wow. And I'll never forget that that first night they called all of us that were on the ward together to have our group conversation, and there were some people in there that were really bad off. And I'll never forget, there was this one female in there. She was a Navy corpsman. This was like her 3rd attempt, and she had this big bandage on the left side of her face that went from her earlobe all the way down to her jaw, because she had put a pistol in her mouth, and as she squeezed the trigger, her boyfriend happened to be there and pulled on the gun, and instead of the bullet exiting the back of her head, it hit her jawbone and exited out of her cheek.
Wow.
Yeah, so that's why she had this big, bandage. And then the other people were telling their stories about, why they were, and I was just thinking to myself, I do not belong here. I do not belong here. And then the next day, my kids visited me in the hospital, and they were just like, devastated. And that's when it really hit me.
What do you say to them, Orlando?
I told them that I was sorry. I was sorry that I almost took their dad away from them. That it wasn't my right to do that. And the 3 or 4 days that I spent at level 4 was good time to reflect. Because I was detached from everything. I had there was no TV there. They had books, but I didn't really feel like reading. So I had a lot of time to just reflect and think about it.
Did you write?
I did not. I did not write. I just thought to myself about how I'm lucky. I'm lucky because I get to be on the other side of this, learning from this experience. That knowing that I'm happy for once that I did not succeed. It's funny how they claim, successfully committed suicide. There's nothing successful about it. It's a tragedy. So I'm glad that I didn't fulfill my intention. That I'm able to be on the other side, looking back and saying that, thank God, I didn't die. Because here's the thing, I was so mad about losing control. I was losing control of my life, my family, everything. And then I decided I'm going to take control and do this one thing. Well, as soon as I did that, I once again released control, because whether I lived or died was no longer up to me. It was up to whether or not those drugs were going to take effect. So it was an illusion.
Are you still in contact with the neighbor that found you?
Yes. Amy has been a good friend over all these years. We don't communicate as we used to, but we always chime in on each other. How are things doing? And I thank her all the time for being my saving grace. for getting me to the help that I needed. And that was what I went through. And
I can only imagine that this complicated things with you and your wife if you were already having some issues.
oh yeah, it was, like I said, it was over. And after that, I accepted the path that we were going to be following, which was separately. So after that happened, I was delayed from deploying with the rest of the Marines.
Understandable.
So the whole unit went to Iraq, and I was in the rear by myself. There was nobody left at Mounts. But there were some elements that had to go to Afghanistan, so I was responsible for shipping them off, which I still did my job. I didn't. Once I was back at work, I was.
How long did it take you to get back in uniform and get back to the grind?
Well, I had to go through mandatory counseling, not just at the psych ward, but through the family practice clinic, family care, whatever they call it. Anyway, so I saw counseling there, and which was good because it was. And this is one of the reasons why I highly recommend counseling to anybody. If you ever feel that you are in a not a bad place, but just in a place that you are not familiar with, that you don't know how to really navigate through whatever troubles you're experiencing, seek counseling. There's nothing wrong with that. If you got a knock in your engine and you're not a mechanic, you're going to take it to a mechanic because that's an expert.
Right.
And you want somebody that knows what they're doing to assess what's going on and tell you how to fix it. That's what a counselor does. If you are in a problem area in your life that you do not know how to get out of, go seek counseling. These people are trained and educated to help you find better ways to approach, deal with, and hopefully succeed with whatever you're going through. So I highly recommend it because it's no more than PME for the soul. It helps you be more decisive on how you want to correct things.
Resilient.
Exactly, resilient, because that resilience is something that you are not born with. You're taught over time. That's one of the reasons why the Never Leave Marine Behind program was so good, I think, because it opened up the discussion, the dialogue between the Marines, and discussing how do you deal with stress? How do you deal with stress? What do you do? Some people do different things. What you and I do to alleviate, whatever pressure we're feeling. Could
Stress,
be two different
anxiety.
things. I mean, I'm sure I know you're big into CrossFit, and that's probably one of your outlets, whether you realize it or not.
So it's funny. It's funny you ask that because I've gotten that quite a bit. I don't do the CrossFit thing just because it has this weird aspect. I mean, growing up in Texas, deadlift, squats, bench press, those three main lifts were part of the football program that I was in high school. So when CrossFit became big, it had this weird, I guess, community groupthink aspect to it that I didn't find attractive. But one thing that CrossFit did highlight that I later gravitated towards was the kettlebells, and so I've incorporated that into my training. But the CrossFit, I've strayed away from that just because I've seen too many bad practices to get too far into it. But yeah, I mean, but what I have done to kind of alleviate stress and become part of a larger community was the jiu-jitsu. And there was a point where I was in a dark spot, and a good friend of mine by the name of John Koenig had he worked with the DEA down in the Dominican Republic, convinced me to come try jiu-jitsu. And I was out there with my boys, and then I started doing it with the adults. And the one thing about it that I liked the most was when a dude's trying to strangle you, nothing else matters. Especially when they're bigger, stronger, faster, and more skilled. You're in survival mode until you start to relax and breathe and think and adjust. And there's a problem solving aspect to it when you're under extreme physical duress that it's almost calming. And it's become a meme where people say jiu-jitsu saved my life. But there was a point in time there where I was actually contemplating suicide, and because of some of the pressures that I was undergoing there in the environment that I was working in at the time. But before it got to the point that you found yourself at, I was able to find a pressure release valve that worked for me. And John doesn't really know, I don't think, the impact that his invite eventually had on me, but it really helped me. And the other thing was that it gave me some one-on-one time with my boys that I think I was missing. I grew up in a house where my father, when he was there, he would move the coffee table and we'd play Let's Get It On in the living room, and it was some of my fondest memories growing up. My dad would beat up me and all the other neighborhood kids, and right there in front of the TV, one at a time. He said, "When you quit, you're done." He eliminated us one by one, but I was doing that in a different capacity with my own sons, and it was it had definitely had a restorative effect to it, and a calming effect, and then it brought me and the boys tighter, but had I not found that I guess that activity or that mindset, I think things could have gotten worse, and so I'm very grateful that they didn't. But I can only imagine the strain and stress that it put on between you and your sons.
Mm-hmm.
So how's that relationship now?
I wish I could say it's good, but ever since the divorce went final, and she actually got remarried, and it was like gasoline and kerosene on an already existing fire.
Yeah.
And over a period of time, it didn't take the two of them long to manipulate my children into abandoning their father. And I haven't spoken to my boys in 3 years.
Wow.
Yeah. So there's not a day that goes by I don't think about them. But what I've tried to do to rationalize it in a way that I won't go insane is that there was a time when we were in court like every 3 months. And every time we would go to court, she pulled them out of school and bring them to the courthouse, putting them through things they didn't need to be involved in. And I'm sure constantly polluting their minds with God knows what. Because the two of them were like two peas in a pod as far as, her and her new husband, and just bad-mouthing. So I felt bad for the kids that they were having to go through this constant dysfunctionality, where you got mom talking about dad. I never said anything about her. I was actually happy for her. I'm happy that she's moved on. She's got 2 more kids. That's great. I only cared about my kids. I only cared about my sons, and seeing them. And I would hope that she would promote that because I'm their father.
Right.
But like I said, it went south really fast, and I actually got the kids to say that they were scared of being with me. And I was like, wow. So I'm not happy about it one way or the other. But I can take solace in the fact that right now, with me, without me in the picture, they're not getting that constant bombardment from them. So hopefully they're able to live their life right now unaffected. And I've heard many people tell me that I went through a similar situation, but over time the kids, they wanted that connection, and I'm hoping I pray for that. I pray for that on a daily. That one day that they will see past the negativity that has been bestowed upon them, and they will seek me out again. And I've always told them that no matter what, I'm always going to love them. I'm their father.
I'm always here for you.
I'm always going to be here.
Yeah.
And the day comes that they call me back, everything that happened is going to be forgotten. It's going to be forgotten.
Okay. So you started working with this program Leave no Marine behind.
Yes, never leave Marine behind. Well, before that happened, so after the deployment with Mouse, I get back in 2010. I completed my tour there. Get back and immediately I'm like, you know what? You've had this whole time to file papers. We're getting a divorce. Like I said, I've accepted it, and I was ready to move on. So we got officially divorced in May of 2010. In July of 2010, I had orders to TTECG, which is Tactical Training Exercise Control Group, 29 Palms, California.
Okay.
I was a coyote out there. So as Marines were going through Mojave Viper, I was one of those guys with the orange Camelback doing the evaluations.
All right.
While I was out there, I got selected to Master Sergeant. Became in charge of the logistics shop. So we were in charge of evaluating the logistics units that were coming through, preparing to go to Iraq, Afghanistan, helping them with their COC operations, getting them more spun up on SOPs and procedures, as well as working with the grunts, logisticians, and making sure that they were doing their log stats correctly and how to keep the log train moving. So it was good. I enjoyed it, but I didn't like the monotony of it. I mean, you could set your watch by our training schedule.
Yeah.
It's like it was like time to make the donuts over and over and over again. And after a while, I got burnt out, and But anyway, I was selected to go to the Senior Enlisted PME in Quantico, Virginia, which was a fledgling program at the time, and I'm glad I went when I did, because now it's like everybody's trying to get in there. And so it was great. I was with E8s and E9s, first sergeants, master sergeants, sergeant majors, master guns, and we're in this class for 6 weeks. We're talking about a variety of different topics, and it's the best class I've ever been to, because it's not so much PowerPoint driven as it is discussion driven. So we're actually sharing ideas and mingling with each other. It was great. So one day we find ourselves in a smaller group. They picked a few of us in a handful and they said, all right, you guys are going to talk here, you guys are going to talk there, you guys are going to talk here. So I was in a group of about 8 or 9, and we're talking about suicide. And this is the first time, so 2012, since my incident, that I had the gumption to actually talk up about it. Because here I am listening to all these, old guys and a few gals with their antiquated mindset of, Marines can't freaking deal with it, suck it up, they weren't compassionate about the trials and tribulations that individuals go through, because not everybody walks the same line. Right. And especially with more and more Marines coming back from Afghanistan and Iraq with, experiences that they were not prepared for and unable to communicate about it. We just can't have that, stick your head in the sand mentality where we don't care about how Marines are feeling, because if somebody goes unattended, they could snap. Maybe they don't just hurt themselves, maybe they hurt somebody else. So I opened up about my experience, and I told them that it's not always the depressed. Like I said, I was angry. I was pissed at what was happening to me, and I took action in my own way. It was the wrong choice, but that's why I did it. It wasn't because, I was like, just in despair and down in the dumps and hurt. Yes, I was those things, but that wasn't my driving factor for doing what I did. It wasn't to, the world's better off without me. No, I was going to show the world that I can do this one last thing. So it's a different mindset. Anyway, after we had wrapped up our discussion, one of the female first sergeants that was in the group came up to me and said that she had been going through a very bad breakup and was drinking heavily and starting to have thoughts of suicide. And she said because of what I had shared with the group, she was going to immediately seek counseling and try and find better ways to deal with her depression. And that's when it hit me like, wow. What I went through, what I endured, and what I am carrying with me is doing nothing for anybody until I speak about it. And the one time I did, it helped somebody. And I was just, at that point I decided, you know what, it's my mission to talk about what happened to me. So that people can realize that it's just not something that you know from somebody that happened, like, 3 people separated away from you.
Right.
Like I know a guy, of a friend, of a cousin, of a brother who attempted suicide. Now it's me. I'm right here in front of you. And the timing worked out perfectly because after I got back from SETME, the Never Leave Marine Behind program was starting to become a big thing in the Marine Corps. Because, at the time in 2010, 11, we were seeing a lot of suicides in the military, Marine Corps especially. And, of course, as we always do, we try and find new programs and ways to combat that. And the Never Leave Marine Behind program, for those that don't remember it, it was a great opportunity for Marines to discuss prevention and identification, symptoms that could be plaguing somebody, how to be more aware of it, and ways to combat it. Because I think in the past, the reason why we've all had that person who's like, the very closed individual, you kind of feel like there's something going on, but they never engaged. Nobody ever engaged before. And I think the reason why Marines never ever broached that subject is because if you asked somebody, hey, are you thinking of hurting yourself? What would you do with a yes? Before you got all that training, what would you do?
So for me, and I've always kind of had this approach to things, and I was talking to a good buddy of mine. He's a Mustang. He's a captain now, and he not poking a finger in my chest, but just in his way, reminding me of who I am. I'm intrusive as a friend, and almost to a fault. But I'm okay with that, because if it's somebody I really care about, I want to make sure that they're doing all right, because I know, especially over the years as we've gone up in rank, the people that we'll actually open up to are few and far between. And he expressed his gratitude for that aspect of who I am as a friend. And so, I can honestly say that when I noticed something was wrong, I would ask somebody, or I would just ask, even if I didn't have, a sneaky suspicion or that spidey sense tingling, but it's not common, and I think it's almost looked down upon to a certain extent. When you start looking at our organizational culture, because we don't want to admit weakness. Mm-hmm. We don't want to display vulnerabilities, and I think that we do that to a fault, because and I've seen it. Some of our junior Marines, they want to live up to the expectations of those that have gone before them, and to a certain extent will do so to their detriment.
Mm-hmm. Because that puts more pressure on them. But a lot of people wouldn't engage with other Marines because they wouldn't know how to handle it. Okay, so this gal or guy is thinking of hurting themselves. What do I do? What do I do? Does this mean I'm attached to the hip now for the next 48, 72 hours? Or
suicide watch.
Yeah. So, and I think that that program was very beneficial because it started giving Marines avenues, tools, guidance. This is what you do when you encounter somebody who's thinking of hurting themselves. This is who you contact. This is what you talk to them about. Making them more comfortable.
Why is the acronym AID Life coming to mind? Was that part of the program?
AID Life? Yeah. No, it was, I think it was it RACE? Recognize, Ask, Care, Escort. Yeah, RACE. So, once you know how to maintain a weapon, how to fix a truck, you become more comfortable with addressing whatever problem you find. And I think that's what it was starting to instill confidence in Marines, or service members, period, that it's okay to ask. Because it's better to ask and both of you can try and figure out a positive way forward together, as opposed to not asking and leaving that person in turmoil alone. And we were starting to recognize Marines, over there at Marine Corps Base Camp Lejeune when I was there, for intervening. Because that's what we're doing for each other. We're saving each other's lives. And there was a vignette in the Never Leave Me Behind program that resonated true to this day. If we were in combat and we see somebody go down in a line of fire, you're going to rush out there and do the best you can to try and save that individual from receiving further injuries. So why is it we don't do that in garrison? Why is it when we see somebody in pain, we do nothing about it? And that's a shame on us for not taking care of each other.
Yeah. So I recently had a young corporal that shot me a message and said, "Hey, Master Sergeant, I got a situation and I don't know how to handle it, and I need some advice." And effectively, he had received a message from a friend of his that's, we're out here in Okie, he's out in Conus, and the tone of the message concerned him such that he felt he needed to tell somebody, and he was concerned that his friend was gonna hurt himself, and so suffice to say, we got in touch with the other Marines chain of command, and yet and still, and they were able to intervene and make sure that the Marine was safe and all. But that Marine of mine was beating himself up because he felt like he snitched. And I had to explain to him, sit him down, and for a good while, and remind him that the motivation that was at the heart of him reaching out to me and then me reaching out to the other Marines chain of command was altruistic. Mm-hmm. He was genuinely concerned about his brother, and if that individual is upset with you, at some point in time, he'll come around.
Yep.
But right now, in the moment, in the heat of things, when he's going through this process, and he's getting the care that he needs, he's still breathing. He's still alive. And that is commendable. But it speaks to that aspect of us that we, sometimes you second guess yourself, and is this the right move? And sometimes, you won't necessarily know the answer to that, but I think I would rather err on the side of caution in those situations 10 times out of 10, as opposed to withholding that information out of doubt, and then the end result being that the Marine ended up hurting himself, and you knew about it and didn't act upon it.
That's one of the things that I would talk about. I ended up becoming one of the top instructors for the Never Leave Marine Behind Master Trainer program on the East Coast.
Okay.
So I was training Marines from as far south as Florida all the way up to Quantico, and I took it seriously, and I was really engaged in what I was passing on to my newly appointed instructors themselves.
Right.
As this is not just a check in the block. You need to really convey the importance of this in the way you engage with those Marines, because you're only talking to 30 at a time. So make sure that they understand the importance of this, because that's what they're going to gain from it. Much like back in the day when I was a recruiter and I asked them, "Why did you join?" Because the way you talked about it. That's one of the reasons why I was so successful in the instructors that I was hominis dominus, as master's trainers now, because they enjoyed the way I was passionate about it. And I said, that's what I want you to be. You don't have my story, but you know me now, and you know my story. So you can tell my story. Tell other stories. Find ways to connect with your group of Marines. So that way they can understand the importance of why you need to engage with each other. And that ended up, I was recognized by somebody. Somebody nominated me for the 2014 Marine of the Year.
You don't know who it was?
Still don't know. They wouldn't tell me.
2014 Marine of the Year.
Yeah, for the Marine Corps Times. So there was every service member, or every service, somebody nominates somebody.
Yeah.
And the Marine Corps Times, they narrowed it down to a couple finalists for each service. And I remember I was on leave. I was in California at the time. And at the time, my cell phone, my smartphone, I would get work emails on my personal phone. They would be forwarded. I'm in California and I'm getting all these congratulatory emails from generals and colonels, and I'm like, what is this? So I'm reading, congratulations.
And your master sergeant tell me, like, you're thinking to yourself, did I get selected to the Master Guns?
Yeah. So and I'm like, there's no way, because it's the summer. The board doesn't let out until December, and I wasn't even anyway. So I call back to the office, and I'm talking to the major that I worked for at the time. I'm like, sir, what's going on? Everybody's congratulated me for something. Did I miss an award? And he's like, so somebody let the cat out the bag. I'm like, a lot of people did. For what? It's like, well, and then he explained to me that the Marine Corps Times had contacted the command. But I was just a finalist. I hadn't won anything.
Right.
But, I guess that was lost in translation. Everybody thought I had won. No, I was in competition. So I was like, all right. So when you get back, the Marine Corps Times wants to come down to Lejeune and they want to interview you. I said, okay, no problem. So I was like, wow, this is kind of cool. And they told me what I was being recognized for with my work in suicide prevention and awareness. So when I got back from leave, they came down to Lejeune and they interviewed me, and they said, okay, by tomorrow or the day after, you'll know if we've picked you. So, very well. And sure enough, got a call a day later that I had been selected. And it was great because at the time, when I was still getting visitation with my kids, they happened to be in Lejeune with us. And they invited us up to D.C. to do the whole kit and caboodle. They gave us tours of the Washington area, the sites, put us up in the Hilton, and I even got to go to the White House, and didn't meet the president, but and then we had our award ceremony on Capitol Hill, and all of us, an individual from each branch were, toted around together, and it was pretty cool. It was the commandant's SJA is the one that was a brigadier general. I can't remember his name right now. He's the one that presented the award with one of my congressmen, and it was nice to have suicide prevention and awareness on the forefront.
Right.
It was good that it was getting some good publicity, and I got a lot of people communicating with me as far as the good work that I was doing, and I was just like, I'm just talking about something I'm familiar with. If it helps people, great. I'm not trying to I was not seeking any recognition whatsoever. It just happened to work out that way. And I, once again, the Marine of the Year, I know for a fact definitely helped in my selection of Master Guns.
Yeah, I can only imagine. So one of the statistics that I've heard is that 22 service members, veterans, a day. That's mind-boggling.
Mm-hmm. You know what? Like you said, there's a stigma in the service, not just the Marine Corps, but all the services where we don't want to talk about feelings because you take it as a sign of weakness. And I think individually, those that are the most alpha male, the most strong-minded, definitely don't want to talk about their feelings. And who do they talk to it about? With? Who do they talk to it with? About it with? Because, I've noticed from a lot of combat vets, you can only talk about Iraq, Afghanistan, with those that have been to Iraq, Afghanistan. And you can only talk about, combat situations with people who have been in combat situations. I'm not here to pretend that I know about the turmoils of combat. I can definitely relate to the hardships of being away from home and being in an area where you do not feel safe. So there's a lot of people out there that don't know who to reach out to. And that's probably why the VA is getting some rework, because I've heard bad rumors about, Marines calling, or not Marines, but service members calling the VA for suicide help and being put on hold.
Right.
But there's other things you can do. You can contact.
It's interesting. I've been a long time subscriber, occasional poster to the USMC subreddit on the Reddit social network, and in there I've seen at least a dozen of young Marines post up. I'm having a hard time dealing with this. Either this, upon completion of their contract, they miss that community, that camaraderie, that brotherhood, and in an anonymous fashion, post up their thoughts, be it contemplating suicide or undergoing severe depression, and the community will just kind of rally around that individual and post up messages of support, send them links, guys that they can call me, message me directly, and I've seen that happen in a weird bulletin board style fashion, but I think that for me personally, there are things that my experience in uniform has caused me to almost to a detriment distance myself from friends and family members that I had before I joined the Marine Corps, and I've gotten closer to guys that I've been in contact with over the years while we've been serving together, different duty stations and whatnot. Guys like, for me, he's now recently selected Master Guns, Vince Quinteros. He and I are really close, and several others that we met at a very formative stage in our development as Marines, and we've maintained contact over the years. And to a certain extent, I'm closer with those guys than I am to my own flesh and blood from back home, because of those shared circumstances and experiences. We've come up together. We've become fathers and husbands, together, and we've gone through those ranks together, and in a lot of ways I have more in common with them than those that I grew up with and around, and so that type of I guess compartmentalization can sometimes make things hard, because even and I found myself at home sometimes at family gatherings on leave and whatnot, and still kind of feeling isolated. Mm-hmm. And I can only imagine for those of us that when they leave active duty and they don't have that network that they were used to having, can feel those I guess can start to experience that isolation, and it starts to compound and grow to the point that it becomes almost danger close for them.
Yeah.
But Master Guns, what does that mean to you now? I mean, from gunny to Master Guns, what has been that single I guess ingredient that you can point to that's kept you in the game this long through everything that you've been through?
So I'm a baseball fan, so I always think of for the love of the game.
For the love of the game.
Yeah, that's the best way I can paraphrase how I feel about why I'm still in it. For the love of what I do, like you were just saying about the camaraderie. I already know I'm not going to find that kind of community out in the civilian life that I have here. I'm not afraid of it. It's going to happen when it's going to happen, but I'm still having fun. I've always talked to a lot of retirees, and I always ask them, I've come to find there's a common reasoning rationale behind their retirement. When you know when it stops being fun. It's time to get up. It's time to go.
So you're still having fun?
I'm still having fun. I still enjoy the conversations I have with the young Marines, instilling whatever knowledge and experience that is relevant that they can partake in. I still enjoy getting the phone calls from my past junior Marines that are now climbing the ranks and looking for advice and guidance, and I appreciate that they call me and ask for my opinion. I enjoy still seeing the world. I enjoy meeting different people and families like you and yours. We never would have crossed paths had it not been for this Marine Corps family that we were all a part of.
Right.
So it's to me it's enjoyable. I'm not ready to go out there and deal with the shallow you know, disloyalty of the civilian populace, because I think, now I'm not saying that it's like that for everybody, but I definitely know it's not like that for us here. We all see each other in the same uniform, and we're immediately accepted by each other because we're all like-minded. We've all been through the same rigorous training of boot camp. We already have that in common. Whether we go different paths, infantry, logistics, intelligence, whatever, we all have that in common. And we are equally and unequivocally brothers and sisters. And I enjoy that. And that's what I'm not looking forward to in this civilian life, where you have to, now you got to get used to, weighing each other out and, sizing each other up and figuring out through...
Sizing each other up?
Yeah.
What do you mean by that?
That's going to happen because you don't know who you can trust. You don't know
right.
who you can turn your 6-2, and I think it's definitely going to be a learning curve because we're so used to not having to question each other's loyalty with each other. Yes, in the military, even in the military, we still have those individuals that will screw each other over. But for the most part, I think we're pretty good with each other.
Yeah.
But talking with my family members who have been in the civilian world the whole time, and the constant stories I hear about people out there just trying to get a leg up on anybody. I'm looking forward to that. Because one thing I do know is that sometimes the hardest workers are the most taken advantage of.
Yeah.
And that's what military members are. We work hard. We work hard because that's instilled in us from day one. That's why so many, I think, civilian employees like military veterans, because they know that we accomplish what we are assigned to do. But I still enjoy what I do. I remember when I got promoted to Master Sergeant, I was talking to the crowd that assembled, and I said, you know what? A lot of people say that you've arrived. I'm like, no, I don't think that. Because to think I've arrived means that I don't have to abide. I said, no, this is just another chapter in my life and a new challenge, because I don't know anything about being a master guns. I didn't at the time. Now I'm a year into it. I'm starting to get a little bit better at it. But I always tell people that I'm humbled by my successes and I'm driven by my failures. And to think that I don't have failures, even at this rank, is foolish. You're gonna make mistakes. No matter how old you get, no matter how much you know, you're still going to find yourself in a situation where you are unfamiliar, and you're gonna have to learn the hard way to know what right looks like. And you have to accept that. Just because you have reached a new plateau or this new level doesn't mean that you have all the experience and knowledge that is expected of that rank. You have to obtain it.
Tell me about it. I tell you, and I was saying this recently to a good buddy of mine. When I got pinned on for Master Sergeant, I thought I knew. As a gunny, I was solid. I felt like I was in that sweet spot. But you grab that third rocker, it was a game changer. Mm-hmm. And just this past week, a good buddy of mine, Stephen Glenn Walker, just got pinned on to Master Gunnery Sergeant, and I watched that man overcome some adversity because not too long after arrival, he got passed over for selection, but he stuck it out, put his nose to the grindstone. He was coming up close to the end of his grade service limits, but put in the work and got selected and was just promoted this past week, and the look on his face when he was talking to the crowd about what this meant to him and what this meant for his family and everything that they'd gone through, I couldn't help but become overwhelmed by emotion, to see the look on his face and hear the trembling in his voice as he was trying to hold it together, because we do get emotional. But I kind of wanted to ask you how your relationship with Megan has kind of brought you back, because I know that your first marriage and your relationship with your children has been strained, that takes its toll. But how were you able to kind of set that aside and allow this new relationship, this new marriage to grow and blossom, and the impact that it's had upon you in the later stages of your career?
It's funny. Megan and I both went through tough marriages. We're both on our second with each other. She had a rough go of it with her ex-husband, just like I did with my ex-wife. And we first started talking. I mean, we were friends because I knew her ex-husband. We worked together at Second MOG, and but that's not at all what I expected. I had gone through a divorce. She had gone through a divorce. I would just reach out every once in a while, message, hey, how are you doing? If you ever need anybody to talk to, I can relate. Like-minded experience, gone through the same things. And one day she just responded, and I was simply looking at this as a friendship. That's all I wanted. That's all I cared about was just having somebody to talk to who had gone through something similar. And before we knew it, we were talking a lot and sharing stories of childhood and growing up and different aspects of our life, and finding out that we had a lot in common. And after my divorce, I had dated and whatever, started to realize more and more about what I was not going to put up with anymore. Like I had recognized that that I am a set individual on certain aspects, and I am not going to put up with familiar behaviors. And I was starting to identify that in different people that I dated. And when Megan and I were talking, I immediately found it not a problem to be friends with her, and I think that was key. That's how it started. We were becoming very good friends with each other and sharing a lot of details that made us even more close. And I think that we both had to endure what we had to endure in our life in order to appreciate what we had found in each other. And it's a common saying that you make me better. I can definitely say that about Megan. Megan makes me better. She drives me to want to be better, not just for me but for her as well. Not because I don't want to screw this up again, because I don't want to have to go through this whole rigmarole one more time. No, it's because I really do appreciate and respect the person and the woman that she is. And I think that at this age, I've definitely matured a lot more to appreciate that. I don't think that if you would have put me in the situation when I was 18, 19, 20 years old, I probably would not be as aware of how lucky I am to be in the situation I'm in. But she's always inspired me for education. She's the reason why I have a college degree now. She keeps pushing the master's on me, and I'm like, I think I'm good. I'm good. 20 years experience plus, or 20 plus years experience and a bachelor's, I think we'll do pretty good. So she's like, yeah. So, but yeah, she continues to push me, which is good, and supportive of everything, equally. I'm supportive of her, of what she does, and here to listen to her vent when she comes home from school about whatever situations arise on a daily, that kind of frustrate her and bog her down, as you can relate, I'm sure.
Oh, definitely.
So,
honey, yeah, I told you she's crazy.
What? She didn't know.
Yeah.
So it's definitely it's a relationship, that in the truest sense of the word, something that I wasn't really truly aware of before. Like I said, I wasn't mature enough yet. I wasn't grown. And it was my mistake for not coming to realization, taking that hard look in the mirror and assessing myself in the way that I needed to be assessed to correct my actions. But now I find myself doing that more so because it's important to self-address whatever shortfalls you have. Because you're the only one that's going to be completely honest with yourself. And to not be lying to yourself. We are all not without faults. I don't care how good of a husband, an employee, a Marine we are. we always have areas that we can improve upon. And you got to be able to look at yourself and say, this is what I need to fix. This is what I need to address. This is what I need to pay attention to. Because if left unattended, it could be a problem.
Right.
And that's one of the things that I'm appreciative of the time that I had with the counselor. She taught me how to do that.
How to communicate, how to open up.
With yourself.
Yeah.
And that's important. A lot of people don't do that. They don't take that time to really be with themselves and understand who you are and what makes you good and bad. And until you can do that or learn how to do that, you're shorting yourself. You need to take that time to really identify areas to improve upon, because we always have that.
Okay. So now as a Master Guns, you're not getting promoted again.
No. No.
But you still feel an obligation to those that are coming behind you. I know that. What do you say to them when their back's against the wall and they're up against what they would deem to be, in the moment, overwhelming odds, be it personal, professional?
You know, what's funny is I still have Marines that come to me with personal and professional problems. And first and foremost, I let them know that, hey, my door is open and I'm ready to talk. I'm ready to listen to what it is you have to open up about. I can assure, and I make sure that I tell them my backstory too, so that way they can feel that I'm not being judgmental. It's not the case. I mean, we're here to help each other. I got a Marine in my office right now who's going through a divorce, and I'm doing the best I can to impose upon him the lessons I've learned as far as how to best deal with your soon-to-be ex-wife, so that way you don't burn and piss on those bridges. I mean, that's the best way I can say it, because I'll admit I did it wrong, and that's why I find myself in the situation I'm in now where I haven't spoken to my kids. So I try to do the best I can. I've talked to a major, a master sergeant, who have gone through similar situations. You know, learn from my mistakes, so you don't have to endure what I'm going through. Try to find the best practices to make sure that you continue those lines of communication without the negativity and the animosity, because it's only going to affect you negatively in the long run. For those that are going through professional burdens, I tell them, you know, it doesn't matter what rank you get to, do not be afraid to ask, how do I do this? How can I do this better? Just because you're a gunny and master sergeant, master guns, you can still ask for help. There's nothing wrong with that. And I think sometimes people in our position are embarrassed to, because like you said before, you don't want to show that sign of weakness. What's wrong with that? What's wrong with learning to do something right? Like I said, I haven't been a master guns before, and as I've been, experiencing this rank for the last year, I've learned a lot, and I've realized that you can still teach an old dog new tricks. And sometimes you don't know what new tricks there are to learn until you ask. Hey, what is this? What is that? How do you do what you do? How can I do that? How can I learn how to do that? And I think as a senior enlisted Marine in whatever shop you're in, like me, I'm in the G3. So I have plans Marines. I got engineers. I got a cop. I got MP. I have Seaburn Marines. I have infantrymen. A vast variety of MOSs that I have never been formally trained in. To sit here and think that I know more than them about what they do is ignorant. So why wouldn't I go down and have the young Lance Corporal teach me about Seaburn, about how to properly clean a gas mask, or why wouldn't I go to the TRT guys and get some mortarman skills? Why wouldn't I go to the plans guys and say, what is it you guys do as MAGTF planners? Besides the shuffling of tasks that we get from MEF to disseminate to the MSEs, what is the intricacies of that?
There was so much animosity when you said MEF just now.
Yeah. So there's a lot that you can still learn at no matter what rank, no matter how high you climb this ladder, you can still learn from individuals, because there is no all-knowing, all-being. Even the commandant and the sergeant major don't know everything about everything. And when they don't know, they ask. They ask, what do you mean by that? Explain to me more on how this process works. And I think that's what everybody needs to accept, is that we are not all knowing, all powerful. Just because people see the rank on my collar doesn't mean that I got everything figured out. I don't. And I'll admit that readily. When I took over the COC CMR, and I'm now responsible for $6.5 million worth of gear that I know jack about, and I admit that to the civilian contractors that run the information systems, the tents, and there's another man, Mr. Robertson, who kind of is like overall umbrella over all of it. I tell them all, look, I am expecting on you guys to help me when I have questions, because I'm going to have a lot of them.
Right.
I've never been in charge of a COC. I've never had these assets under my responsibility. I even spent a week in the warehouse with the HDT, they're the contractors that service the tents for the COCs, and some of my Marines, and I took my blouse off, and let's put these tents up. How do I repair them? How do I take them down? How do I wrap them up? Because this is my gear.
Right.
I can't sit there and say, okay, Corporal, you take care of it. Because that Corporal's not responsible for that stuff. I am. And if he breaks it, I'm the one who's going to answer for it.
Right.
So, yeah, why wouldn't I get intimately knowledgeable with that equipment? And right now I got the comm guys doing the server upgrades and the re-imaging of all my laptops. Well, I'm down there in the comm company. How do you guys do this? Because I know jack about comm. I know how to pick up the phone and dial the phone number.
Right.
But I don't know what they do and how they do it. So it's good to get out there and learn these things. I'm not going to be proficient at it, but at least I'll get an idea.
And I've also learned that when as a master sergeant, and if I'm asking a junior Marine, how does this work? How does this operate? The Marines, they get a kick out of that, being able to teach the old dog new tricks and explain what it is that they do. And I found in that way, I'm able to get them to open up a little bit more freely. Mm-hmm. As I'm applying that intrusive style of leadership to ensure that I'm looking out for their entire well-being, not just, how are they performing on a daily basis in the shop, but how are they coping with life in Okinawa, in the bricks, away from, the normal things that they're accustomed to back in the continental United States, and what, their counterparts at Piddleton or Lejeune would be able to have access to, be it, a personal vehicle and, the regular lifestyle outside of being here in Japan. But who do you go to besides the junior Marines when you're in need of mentoring?
I talk to my peers. I've talked to other master guns. Yeah, because there are guys out there that have been doing this longer than me. I even talk to sergeant majors as well. I try to do because
why do you say it like that?
Well, because people, master guns and sergeant majors, there's this stigma that we kind of stick to our own, which is not the case. When I was over at Headquarters Regiment, I had a daily conversation with the sergeant major.
I have to say, you invited us over to your house one evening, and I was surprised to see as many master guns and master sergeants here as there were sergeants major. Mm-hmm. That was surprising to me, because it's been my experience that there's not a lot of mixing and mingling. But I think, upon arrival here in Oki, I'm starting to see that's not necessarily the case, and there is some of that going on. And it was actually the first time I got a chance to meet Sergeant Major Marquez, mm-hmm. Before he was installed as the MEF Sergeant Major. Well,
I'm proud as hell of him. He was my sergeant when I was a young lance corporal.
What?
Yeah, when I was back in LSB in Camp Delmar in Pendleton, he was one of my sergeants. And I remember when he left for DI school, we were like, oh man, we lost a good one. We lost a good NCO.
No, you didn't.
And throughout the years, he still hung around. And that was the good thing about the social media and Facebook. You start being able, people start popping back up on the radar,
right,
that you lost track of over years. And now you get to see their successes and how they're doing. And it's really cool. When I first came to Okinawa, and they showed us this house to move into, and I remember they were showing us the neighborhood, and we drove by his house, because he used to live right up the street, right next to the West Pack. His name was right there, Marquez. I'm like, well, there can't be too many Sergeant Major Marquez. It's got to be Mario. And sure enough, it was him. And ever since I got here, I keep in constant contact. Well, not constant, but as much as I can. Especially now, he's busy.
Yeah.
He's busy as heck. You know, with the 3-man sergeant major position. But every time we get together, it's always very, very pleasant, very down to earth guy.
Yes, he is.
He's
Definitely.
he's never let the power and the rank go to his head, and it's good. And I think if there's any bit of advice I can pass to any of the Marines that achieve responsibility, higher rank, stay grounded. Remember where you come from. You did not come in this Marine Corps as a master sergeant, as a master guns, as a sergeant major. You had to endure and get there. And when you arrive, as I said before, you haven't arrived. Yes, you get promoted, but you still have to remember that there are other Marines below you that need your story on how you got to where you got. What right things did you do? What wrong things would you not have done? And don't forget about them, because it's not about you anymore.
It's not about you.
It's about the rest of your Marines, because they're the ones that are going to continue this legacy once we are, long gone. And how they continue it depends on how well you leave it for them and how you prepare them for that baton to be passed.
But to boil it all back to one point, stay grounded.
Yep. Stay grounded.
And with that, we're out.